Can I ask you a question here?
Yes, ma'am.
What was it like being on lockdown? They just lifted it. What's your name and where are you from?
My name's Nicholas Petra. I go to YSU and I'm a freshman. It was so scary. You never know nowadays because all these mass shootings, and we heard that there was a guy with a gun on campus.
As you can see, there are 2 water main breaks, and they are trying to fix those now. They believe they're from aging pipes, and they tell us those 70 water customers should have their water back on. They are hoping within the next half hour. It was here in the gymnasium at Paul C. Bunn where a mother alleges her child was involved in an altercation with one of those coaches during the after-school program. Now, the Youngstown City Schools did investigate, but they say there was no finding of any wrongdoing. However, they did ask that that coach be removed. This technology can be used to weed out suspicious packages and other bomb threats. Some of the people I talked to say when they think of the Cleveland Indians, they think of Chief Wahoo. And while the new logo may solve one issue, some fans think it's confusing.
Ultimately the best case scenario.
GM employee Tom Davis and his wife Tiffany have spent years making their house a home.
We've been here for close to 14 years. Brought 2 kids home here. A lot of Christmases, a lot of birthdays.
But with the production of the Chevy Cruze now in GM Lordstown's rearview mirror, the plant idled and no new product on the horizon, Davis says after nearly 18 years at the plant, his family is putting their home up for sale. They're moving in with a loved one and waiting to see what contract talks bring.
Just to make sure we don't have a house payment, so if we have to go somewhere, to hopefully somewhere like Michigan or Indiana, we already got the house for sale.
His wife Tiffany is a Lordstown school teacher and their children 5 and 10 years old, so he's waiting to put in a transfer at least until they're finished with the school year.
I'm afraid to put in for one and then they take me right away.
The other problem? Too many unanswered questions. This entire situation has even made the couple's son Brian speak his mind, and it's clear he's wise beyond his years, as seen in this Ohio Democratic Party ad.
Mary Barra herself has to remember not just Lordstown, not just the Mahoning County bailed her out when they were going out of business. The entire country did. And her way of thanking us leaves me speechless.
And this young mind is smart enough to realize that his family is forced to make a decision for the future without knowing if the Lordstown plant will ever get another product.
It's not knowing what's going to happen that's the worst about this.
We talked it through.
Davis's wife Tiffany says if they decide to take a transfer, it's like starting over and they'll have no support system in a new state. And no matter what, it's going to cost them.
Either we've sold the home that we've worked hard for and we have to, start over in that aspect, or we have to move to a completely different place and start everything over again. So nothing about the situation is easy. Not knowing is making this extremely difficult.
Now, Tom Davis tells me that his father worked at GM Lordstown for 30 plus years and always told him to never wait on GM to make major life decisions like getting married or buying a house. But he tells me this time is far different because this time GM is not giving them any choice. Back to you. Can I ask you a question here?
Yes, ma'am.
What was it like being on lockdown? They just lifted it. What's your name and where are you from?
My name's Nicholas Petra. I go to YSU and I'm a freshman. It was so scary. You never know nowadays because all these mass shootings, and we heard that there was a guy with a gun on campus, and I was in the same building with my friend Anthony Alberti, and he said, "We gotta go." And I said, "Why?" And he said, there's a guy with a gun on campus, and we just got up and left, and everybody was running. And then
as you can hear, one of the students there speaking about the lockdown right there. The suspect has turned himself in. Michelle Nix live on campus. We need to listen in.
Everybody at YSU is a little shook, but we're fine now.
You're fine now?
Yes.
Yeah, where are you going to go? You going home?
I think we're going home. I don't think we're going to have classes for the rest of the day. It's really scary. Everybody's shook.
Well, we're glad you're okay. Thanks for talking to me.
Oh, thank you too so much. Have
Take
a good
care.
one.
Well, as you can hear from that student, I mean, obviously they were getting very little information because of this lockdown situation, and they're just thankful that they can go home for now. All these students just relieved. The suspect, what we're hearing now is that the suspect has turned himself in. Again, the suspect that reportedly may have had a gun, or at least the threat of a gun, has turned himself in. The lockdown has been lifted here on the YSU campus. I'm sure we will be hearing more in a briefing later on today. Good evening. The halls of justice here in Mahoning County were roped off as a crime scene this morning after Robert Seaman jumped to his death. This just 1 week before his trial was set to begin. And I want to warn you that the video you're about to see may be disturbing. This video captures the final seconds of defendant Robert Seaman's life. He leaves Judge Maureen Sweeney's courtroom after a status conference. At the order of the court, he's dressed in civilian clothing, no handcuffs, only a leg restraint, and escorted by 2 deputies. But in a split second, he makes his move, jumps over the 4th floor balcony, falling to his death. A witness says you could hear one of the deputies yell, "Don't." Joe Gorman, a reporter with our print partner, The Vindicator, witnessed the commotion, saying people were screaming and crying.
And I heard somebody shout. I looked across from me and I saw a deputy at the railing on the 4th floor, and I saw a big white object falling through the air. And then I screamed because it was freaky.
Seaman's attorney, Tom Zena, rushed to the 1st floor rotunda to see if there were any signs of life.
I got down there right after and I tried to take a pulse, and there was a little faint one, but then it faded out.
Seaman, who was facing the death penalty if convicted of killing 10-year-old Corinne Gump and her grandparents in a house fire 2 years ago, was also expected to be transported to Portage County today, where his trial would begin next week. But his attorney says he was not suicidal.
Never, no. He worked on his case with us. He was very responsive.
Prosecutor Dawn Cantalamesa feels Seaman's final act speaks for itself.
I think it's very telling. He knew the evidence against him.
With more local news, I'm Michelle Nix. Frank Elling of the Idora area has been shot at twice and been jumped by a group of teens, but it hasn't scared off this neighborhood warrior.
I don't take threats well.
Instead, Elling fought back, arming himself with a camera. Ever since, he's been determined to stop the opioid and heroin drug deals, overdoses, and break-ins by using his watchful eye to spook the bad guys who sometimes can allegedly be spotted in this drugstore parking lot.
This is where the buyers of all types of drugs and prostitution want to come.
One day, through his camera lens, the opioid epidemic really came into focus and was as real as it gets. A woman lies overdosing on the pavement, an empty pill bottle nearby. And Elling says, sadly, this wasn't the first time.
One guy goes in the store, he comes back out, they had shot up, and both of them are sitting in the car, just, you can see it. I mean, they're zoned out.
These images are what Elling wants to delete from his hard drive and the community's image. Now he's calling on local churches to team up by forming 24/7 community patrols.
It takes not a police state, but a citizen state. Churches need to put people to work until it's done.
Jeff Solik, the commander of the Mahoning Valley Drug Task Force, agrees, saying no one knows a neighborhood better than those who live in it. But understand, cleaning up the streets won't happen overnight.
Society in general, they like immediate results, and we can't do these large, complex investigations like you just saw in Columbiana County. They have over 100 defendants. That was a great investigation, but I'm sure that wasn't done in 48 minutes like you see on TV.
And community tips have led to the prosecutions of the criminal gangs, the Vic Boys, H Block and E Block, and dozens of drug, gun, and burglary prosecutions, including the arrest and conviction of one of the area's top heroin dealers, DeWaylen Colvin, who was linked to 4 murders. With more local news, I'm Michelle Nix.
Hi. What's up, buddy? Did you vote for me? I did. Hubbard senior Preston Allen is gifted when it comes to his personality. He's the king of the hallways and could be crowned king of the school.
He's great. Always goes to football games, supports everybody.
What's amazing is to see how far Preston has come, especially after you hear how his life started.
We never, ever put limits on Preston. The sky is the limit for him. And to this day, this proves it today that he's soaring. And he's soaring among the eagles in Hubbard.
Preston is autistic and was adopted by Richard and Sally Allen at 23 months because he couldn't walk, talk, or sit up and was going to be put in an institution. But he's flourished since attending Hubbard High School, and his classmates campaigned and succeeded in putting him on the homecoming court.
It's above a dream.
As Preston practices walking with the entire court, we asked him who he would like to see become queen. He adoringly points to his teacher.
Oh, thank you.
As for what he told his mom when he learned about making homecoming court,
and he said, so Mom, does that mean people like me? And I said, everybody likes you, Preston.
Now, the king and queen, again, will be officially named here at Hubbard High School at 6:30. And whether Preston win or loses, many people here say they already have their king. Derek and Leslie, officers Casey Kelly and Greg Tackett tell me when they saw the condition of 3.5-month-old Tariq Morris, they knew every second mattered. And even though in the end the child had to be taken off of life support and died, they knew that they had given this innocent child who had been shot every chance at life. When YPD officers Casey Kelly and Greg Tackett responded to the Pasadena shooting, where the car was riddled with bullets, they saw 2 adults in the front seat, but were shocked at what they found in the back.
It looked like a pile of clothes, to be honest with you, because they had a blanket over top of the baby carrier. And as I'm shining my light, I looked up and I saw the baby's face, and that's when I was kind of like, oh no.
The officers say the baby also never made a sound, even though he was looking around and clearly critically injured by gunfire.
Not a cry, not a whimper, not anything. It was kind of just laying there.
For Officer Greg Tackett, he just remembers being in the cruiser, holding the infant in the baby carrier, and Tariq looking up at him.
I just remember he kept putting his little hand in my hand, and I was just holding on to it. And it was very hard.
The officers decided to take the baby in the police cruiser to the hospital, knowing it could be 4 minutes before the ambulance was on scene.
Short of pushing my foot through the floorboard to get the pedal to get as fast as I can get going, that's what I was doing. I was jamming it, and he's telling me, he's like, come on, let's go, let's go, let's go.
Officer Kelly says they may have reached speeds of up to 120 miles per hour, running lights and sirens. St. East police had lights and sirens on and were actually moving cars over for Youngstown as nurses and doctors waited to grab the baby at emergency.
It was very hard to see that child in that condition.
It's a story 21 News reported exclusively, and tonight new developments as the man accused of brutally beating a disabled man is arrested again, and this time in a courtroom.
Michelle Nix has new developments in the case against a hired caregiver caught on tape allegedly doing anything but delivering the care he was hired to give.
Devanzo Tate Sr. is taken into police custody from Judge Elizabeth Cobley's courtroom as he's arrested on a new felony assault charge. One of his 2 previous misdemeanor assault charges will be dismissed and enhanced to the felony level after his alleged crime was caught on tape.
Beat your to death. You hear me? You hear me?
Tate Sr., who worked for Synergy in Richmond at the time, was supposed to provide basic care for individuals with disabilities. Instead, he is accused of slamming a chair over a patient's head and threatening to kill him. The assault charge against him was enhanced because the victim in this case was functionally impaired, according to prosecutors.
Defendant, while in the care of him, did assault him.
Tate Sr. was arraigned by video from the Mahoning County Jail on the new charge, saying he has hired his own attorney. He has since been terminated from his job as a caretaker from Synergy Enrichment after several videos surfaced of him allegedly beating the same patient.
Now what you gonna do? Huh? Now what you gonna do?
Tate Sr. is also a former Mahoning County Sheriff's deputy, and he's also charged with aggravated menacing and another charge of assault, this time against a 13-year-old Youngstown school student, who police say he charged, grabbed with both hands around his neck and threw to the ground during an after-school program. He is no longer involved in that program. With more local news, I'm Michelle Nix.